Hey garden friends, welcome back to Flower Patch. Today we're going to talk about, as I do some chores, native plants. So as far as native plants, what defines a native plant? Let's find out. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and or share with your friends. Someone may enjoy this information. Alrighty, so what qualifies as a native plant? Interestingly enough, there is no consensus of what is the definition and or what makes a native plant a native plant. So that leaves us in a conundrum, doesn't it? It is so interesting when I was reading up. I have been for a while because it seems like, not a trend, I wouldn't say trend. It seems like there's a push. You always hear it, plant native, do this, do that. Nurseries are having their native plant section. And so you have to ask, so what is a native plant? Some say that it is plants that were here before the intervention of humans. Really? Humans have been here at the dawn of time. So then there is some that say, okay, it was before, in the U.S., it was before European settlers came to the United States. And I don't know what other countries define it as. But now you got to think about that. Said because, you know, the settlers moved from the back east to California. They brought plants, whatever. But do you realize that native or indigenous peoples of America, Native Americans, they also moved around and they took plants, seeds, things like that. So really, was it the settlers that disrupted the native plant into, what do you call it, native plants in general? So yeah, lots and lots of questions. So many times, I'm going to go ahead and plant up some stuff while we're talking about this. Is that a seed? I don't know what that was. Anyways, I am going to plant up. I am going to, I did the salvia seeds for indoors, and I'm going to put some in a jug to go outdoors. Now, this is March. We'll get back to native plants in a minute. But it's okay, because these are hardy 3 to 9. I don't know if they'll come up, but there's so many things that do well planting up. And remember, plants were growing from seed way before we started growing them indoors. So we will just go with what's left. The packet cost me a couple bucks. So even if this doesn't work, and I already have stuff coming up indoors of this, it's all good. So anyways, so one of the myths about native plants is that they decrease biodiversity. And that's actually not true. It is so funny, not funny, interesting is the term I'm looking for. Now, if you look at a report, I think it's called the Great Dixter Research or Report or something like that. That is in a state in England, and they did a trial over years. And they planted wild native plants, a meadow of them, etc., hedgerows, whatever it is they did, and in a large area. And then within their gardens, they had the more curated, they incorporated some of the native plants in there, but they also had what is called, if it's not a native plant, they're terming them exotic plants. So they had a mix. And it was curated, of course, as, you know, different gardens are, how you plant them and set them up, with the boxwood hedges and all those pretty, I call it formal elements. But after so many years of the study, researching how many pollinators, insects, what have you, and the pollinators that were indigenous to the area. So we're talking about the native pollinators that are supposed to thrive on native plants. Well, come to find out, the mix of plants in the curated garden had way more of the insects than the wild flowers alone, the wild plants. So that tells us something right there. That tells us that you don't have to go all into wild plants or native plants to help with the diversity. I guess that's the word I was looking for, the diversity in your garden. What is good for all the pollinators, even the ones that are supposedly only interested in native plants. Yeah, so there was a movement that went on for a while in, for me, the knowledge I have is in Britain, and it was called rewilding, where they would go back to just the wild plants or native plants in certain sections. And they found that it didn't work. That was not the way to get the diversity they were looking for. And yeah, it was a big fat fail. Some people may argue with that, but that was what I had learned from some studies that I looked at. So I'm just going to put a little vermiculite in here after I had pressed the seeds down in the soil. So that's a myth. That there's more, it decreases biodiversity to have cultivated plants in your, or exotic plants in your garden. So incorporating natives is not hard, like the echinacea is native here. Coreopsis is native here. There's so many things that are native and that are beautiful. And some of them are the nativars or cultivars or whatever. So, you know, it's just, yeah, a mistake to think that you have to go all native to be ecologically minded. Another myth is that native species are better adapted to your environment or your local conditions. And that is also not true, because where these natives, many of them are, they require their native habitat. So a new build or an urban environment or even a suburban environment where the soil's been disturbed, the ecosystem has totally changed, they won't do well. And so if the plant is not healthy, then it's going to have problems and not thrive. And therefore it can invite more pests, because pests go for unhealthy plants. So no matter what, across the board, whether it's an exotic plant, native plant, a healthy plant will resist pests. It doesn't have to be a native plant to resist pests. It just has to be a healthy plant. Another misnomer is that native plants are more desirable than exotic plants or non-native plants. And that's really not true. Poison sumac, poison ivy, those are all native plants, but you certainly don't want them in your garden. And yeah, that's a big fat misnomer. Okay, I'm looking for my tape. Where did I do? Okay, it's right here in front of me. All right, I'm going to pause one moment because I don't think you want to hear me do this. So I have my salvia in the jug. And whether or not we keep getting really cold temperatures, which in March we do, doesn't matter as far as this sowing. This is no longer technically winter sowing, even though it's still winter. Here it is March. Things will be getting warmer, but we could still get a lot of snow here in March. We just got 2 feet of the big storm. Fortunately, it hit away from us, fortunately for us. So we didn't get the brunt of it, we just got a couple feet. So, okay, so far that's what I'm discussing on. Let me see, do I want a paint pen? Let me see if this paint pen, last time I used it, it was kind of getting salvia. Yeah, it's toast. I need to go get a different one. A lot of people say, oh, well, these will fade in the sun. It does, but I can still read it, so it's fine for me. And I also put it on the tape, and when you put it on the tape, it doesn't seem to lose much salvia, and this one is the Violet Queen. I was tempted to buy more salvia seeds. And then I kind of tell myself, wait and see how these do. There were some pink ones I wanted, And another one, Violet Queen, I think it's like 18 inches tall. There was one that they get just like 12 inches tall, which I think that's a nice salvia. Size. Queen. Okay, now I did say in my last video that I was going to go ahead and pot up. Show you how to pot a rose, which is pretty basic. Now, this I buy own root roses because they do better for me. You don't have to worry about suckering because the sucker is going to be the plant, not the graft. Grafted plants don't always do that great for me. I've lost many because we've had freak late or very early freezes, and it'll kill it down to the ground, the rose, and it doesn't, when it comes back from the graft, then it's the Dr. Huey graft and it's not the rose that I purchased. Whereas with own root, they will always come back the rose that I want. So that's why I lean into own root roses instead of grafted roses. And yeah, I have some potting soil here. Put in here. Now, one thing about it with the own root roses, you don't have to worry about burying the graft or how deep it is. You just have to give it plenty of room to grow. Now, this one is called Super Excelsia. I will, or Excelsa, put a picture of it up. Look at those wonderful roots. Oh, wonderful. Oh, you know what I should do? I should give it a good boost by soaking it in the organic wrap. I forget to do that at times, and I do know that it gives them such a great boost that it's worth me taking the time to do it. So when we continue, as we continue our conversation, I will have that soaking. Let me find something to get some water in. I'm going to go out and get some water. Okay, I went and got the water. Alrighty. So this is for the rose that I'm going to transplant into the pot. And I'm going to soak it for a little bit. Oops, I forgot to put the Rev in. Okay, this is the Rev, and it's a growth stimulant, and it helps the plant to produce mega roots, which is what helps feed the plant and make it healthier from the inside out. So I just poured a little bit in there and let her soak. Probably should let it soak longer than I'm going to, but I want to get this done. Okay, so this is going to be set aside. I don't know what that was for. Anyways, let me set that over there. These are interesting pots. Look how big the holes are in the bottom. Alrighty, so what are we going to end up taking? I have another tray. I'm going to pot up some seeds. So, okay, I wanted to continue the discussion on the native plants. So, yeah, there's a problem with state divisions, meaning one state will say that this plant is native here, and the next door state, which has the same plant, will say they're not native. I mean, that's a big issue. So there was one thing I found interesting when I was researching this, is that, I think it was North Carolina, that they found a fossil of a ginkgo plant from eons ago. And supposedly, I mean, that's an Asian plant, right? So how could that be something that was here? Well, if you recall, eons ago, the continents were all together. So it was like one big land mass. And at the time, obviously, ginkgos grew there in North Carolina. And then they shifted apart. And so plants, what do you call them, adapted or do whatever in this part and other plants in this part. So because of the change in the climate when that happened, what thrived where changed. And that's the one thing that's just left out of the equation of this push for everybody to grow mostly native plants, is that the climate changes on the earth. if you recall, when they found some mammoths, woolly mammoths up in Siberia, they found one that was quick frozen, had been quick frozen. He was still intact, and in his mouth was plant material. Now this is up in the Arctic, regions up there in Siberia. Where it's so cold, those things don't grow now, but at one time they did. So is that considered a native plant there? Because at one time it grew there naturally. It wasn't introduced by man. So you could see the conundrum. But what is really disturbing is it's more about an agenda now than it is preserving plants that may be going extinct. Because there was horticulturists. Horticulturists, they were propagating and bringing back into cultivation. I shouldn't say cultivation. They were bringing back plants that were nearly extinct. They were endangered. And they were chastised. And the plants were destroyed. The ones that they had, propagated. And they had plenty to plant out. They were selling them to people to put in their gardens. And they were, because the whole thing was the people that got them in trouble were ones that they were trying to preserve a habitat. And as long as that plant that grew in that habitat was near extinction, they had a foothold. And then when all of a sudden it was propagated and these people were selling it, it was no longer endangered, and therefore they were losing traction as far as preserving that habitat. So it really wasn't about preserving the plant. It was what they were wanting to do, and they were getting money for it. Therefore, they were going to lose their funding. They were going to lose. So they made them destroy those plants. Now, is that crazy? I mean, if you really are concerned about preserving a certain plant for certain pollinators that it's supposed to help, or, wouldn't you be cheering them on or find an equal footing, something, rather than, oh, we're going to lose our funding, therefore we don't want you to do that because, that to me is astounding. So I take it all with a grain of salt. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, because here in California, the natives, they're adapted to the conditions. The conditions are changing. Everybody realizes that. They have changed over the years for centuries. And they will continue to do so. Plants are so adaptable. And our working to preserve certain ones like those horticulturists had, and they were selling them in nurseries, and then they got in trouble. It's doable if people get out of the way. Because people become so polarized in their agenda that they lose common sense. So it has been found, like I said, with the Great Dictator, that exotic plants or plants that we put in our gardens and attract pollinators are beneficial. Mix them up. Go for native plants, but also you can go buy your rhododendrons and your hydrangeas and your hibiscus, the native hibiscus. Well, there are native hibiscus and there's other hibiscus, but so don't overthink it. When you're planting your garden, you will almost always have some natives in your garden because they're so widespread, many of them. The endangered ones, you couldn't probably grow in your garden because they need specific habitats. Now, there's saying that natives use less water. Not always. There's natives that live in boggy, swampy areas. You could not plant that in your garden and expect it to live unless you had a swampy, boggy area. So that's just ridiculous to say that natives use less water. There's a lot of exotics that use as little or less than many native plants. So that is not an argument at all as far as planting strictly native plants. It's all propaganda. So we need to keep an open mind. We need to be balanced, think things through, and not get caught up in the agendas that everyone else is pushing for whatever reason. And it does. People just catch on. They'll read something and they think, oh, that must be true because all these people keep saying it. And it's kind of like organic gardening became a catchphrase in the late 90s or mid 90s. I've always been an organic gardener. Trying to garden like nature. I avoid putting chemicals, well, you know what I mean, synthetics in my garden because I prefer natural ones. Natural synthetics. Oh, it came out wrong. But yeah, that is that. I've been trying to find, I had seeds for my dichondra and I don't know where I put them. I looked on my table where I had a bunch of stuff and because I wanted to start some of those seeds, and doggone it if I haven't misplaced them. Alrighty, double cascade petunia. No, I don't need that big a thing. So let's see what we got going on here. Okay, my burpee seeds, bed on butterfly, snapdragon, bergamot. I planted that out in the garden. Natapino. Oh, here's something that probably get me in trouble with a lot of people. I love the castor bean plant. Yes, I know that the seeds are poisonous if you eat them. I'm not going to eat them. And most critters, wild critters, they know better than to eat them. So I think I'm going to do them in this. I'm going to do 6 of them. They make the most beautiful red foliage. And if you're worried about, like if you have pets and you don't want them to, cut the flowers off. Then they won't go to seed. It's the ricin in the seeds that they're when they press them, etc., or eat the plant, their seeds that are poisonous. But you can cut those right off. I don't have any animals that eat plants, my plants, so I am not worried about it. It cracks me up watching these British garden shows, and they grow all these plants that people here in the U.S. go gaga over because they're poisonous. And we've been growing them I've grown all the so-called poisonous plants. Foxgloves, I've grown them. I grew them when my kids were little. I had no worries about my kids eating them. First of all, the leaves are bitter. They're fuzzy so that nobody wants to stick them in their mouth. So delphiniums are poisonous. I have monkshood, and I have grown monkshood forever. And castor beans. Yeah, oleanders. Oleanders are poisonous. A lot of people get in a huff over those, but in the valley where they were all alongside the road because they're tough, they're actually pretty. Some people, because they see them all the time, they get tired of them. They're like, oh, oleanders, I don't like those. But the white ones, my sister-in-law planted some across from her house against the fence line because she looked right into packaging yard for a grower. And they grew within 3 years. They just blocked that view, and they just bloom so pretty. So they have their place. Now, you wouldn't grow them around cows or horses that would eat them because that would harm them. But that's all good. I need a marker. So, and my pin. So I don't know. What do you think about native plants? Are you do you think that it's really necessary? I mean, because there's actually people trying to get laws passed where you can only plant native plants. So I don't know if you want that freedom taken away from you. I certainly don't. But people, they become so polarized in their ideas that they don't use reason. And that's what's scary. When these trends take off and they try to push what you can and cannot do. It's just sad. Okay, so we have to figure out what we're going to plant in these trays. You know, a lot of my plants inside are going very well. I am trying so hard not to plant my tomatoes yet. It's just too early for them. And they take, extra care until they can go out in the garden, and it'll be a while before I could put them out there. So, as I said, I'm trying really hard not to get ahead of myself. So I just got to figure out what I'm going to plant in here. You know what? I really want a lot of white swans. And I put some white swans out there, winter sowing them. And now I'm going to go ahead and do this tray. I was thinking maybe I'd do a smaller tray, but I don't have a smaller tray right now. So we will go with this one. And whatever does not come up, or whatever I don't use, I will give away. I'm sure somebody wants white swan, and since white swan is an echinacea, which is a native, then we're good to go. Now the pure native is the purple, and that would be, I have plenty of that. It reseeds itself readily. Last year, the seed heads got infested with a mite that ate the flowers. So hopefully I got enough. I left them this fall to just go ahead and reseed themselves, and we'll see what they do. I'll try to spray with my rosemary spray so that, maybe I'll have a chance against the mites. So 2 to 4 weeks before your average last frost date, or in fall. Cool temperatures may delay germination. So germination is 65 to 70. That's, I don't even have to put them on my heat map for that. I might put them on there for a little bit. Well, I don't know. It might be higher than 70. So seed depth 1/4 of an inch. So I'll sprinkle some more soil on it, and then I'll put some vermiculite in there. Now I did pasteurize the soil. I put it in the microwave for a few minutes, and hopefully that was enough to kill off any, this is a new bag of soil, by the way, any not spider mites, why did I say that? Any of the fungus gnats. So I know a lot of people will not agree with me about the natives. They've gotten caught up in all the rhetoric and haven't done their own deep research. So yeah, as I said, many natives, they need specialized conditions, and our gardens are not suitable for those. So plant what you want. Just don't do anything invasive. I just was watching, I read an article along one area, I can't remember if it was in Oregon or whatever, where the pampas grass is taken off next to a creek. Maybe it was here. Oh, maybe it was down Santa Barbara. Yeah, no, that's different. That's different when you've got these plants that just get in there and take over. And some weeds are native plants that can get in there and choke out other desirable native plants. So it's not just exotics that become a bully and cause problems. I was thinking, they say that rats. How did that tape get down there? I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. So this is my white swan echinacea. I will take this one in and put it on my light rack. And I still have some out there that I winter sowed. I'm still waiting to do my zinnias because, yeah, those would not even make it out here in the cold. I want to be able to, like the echinacea, once they sprout and get so high, I can bring them out here. They'll be fine in the greenhouse, even in colder temperatures. So, okay, that one, I don't know what I want to do with that one yet. Anyways, so I got some echinacea planted. I got some castor bean planted. Oh yes, salvia in a jug. And I'm going to get my rose. That's right. I'm going to get my rose potted up. I'll just set this aside. Oh, I know. I'm a little discombobulated. It all is good. But, so, Super Excelsa. Now this is, I think, is this a Rambler? I got this one at Rogue Valley Roses. I like companies that grow roses on their own roots and some that have vintage roses or antique roses. So this one, Super Excelsa, hybridizer Carl Hetzel, fragrant, very fragrant, fully double, climbing polyantha. That's what this one is. Now I love modern roses, but I love vintage and heirloom roses as well. And they have their own feature. Now, many of them are highly fragrant, much more fragrant than you will get in many new modern roses. They will repeat bloom, a lot of times in flushes, just like any modern rose. And some actually do just like continuously bloom. Now, like with my Eden rose, it continuously blooms, but the first bloom is the biggest, and then the continuing blooming is more sporadic or has fewer flowers, but it's still considered continual blooming. Okay, so that is it. Like I said, with own-root roses, you don't have to worry about burying the graft or how deep it goes. You just plant them as they were. You can plant it a little bit deeper than it was in the original pot. It doesn't really matter. Oh, here's a nice shallow tray. Yeah, and they're so easy. And if this did die back to the ground, the roots would still be alive, and the plant would come back from the roots, and it would be the same plant as what I planted. So let's see, what is it? I was just making sure all this was alive on the ends. I can prune this back. Where's my little pruners? I was going to do my scissors, but yeah. Anyways, so this I do believe I got on one of my arbors or one of my obelisks in the Rose Cottage garden. And it has these little double red flowers or dark pink. Also, I've been looking for mini haha, and I still have not been able to find it. There is a nursery in Florida that she says she might have it. She's going to wait and see this spring and summer when it blooms. She says she'll know by the blooms. I guess she's as disorganized as I am. Okay, so there we go with that rose, and I will go ahead and I will put it in a dish, and I will water it with the leftover organic Rev water. And this will continue to stay in here. Oh, that's what I should do. In an upcoming video, pretty quick, I'm going to bring out my rose cuttings. I just took them last month, and many of them have rooted. I've been trying to let them get more roots, but I can pot them up into the 4-inch pots, or even these ones that I got these roses out of. That would work too. But I have more than just the two. So I'll pot them up. It's super easy, and we can talk about something then. I don't think I left anything out about the native plants. That's just some research I have done and found out about them, and yeah, it makes me think, yeah, I want to have native plants in my garden if they'll thrive, if they like the conditions that are in my garden, just like I have the echinaceas, and I do have coreopsis. There's other native plants, yeah, the milkweed, there's native milkweed that I have. So let's just not get overboard and worrying about replacing our exotics, whether they're hydrangeas or other plants that supposedly are not native, with native plants, because they can coexist, and we still will benefit the pollinators, we will still benefit the flora and fauna, whatever, but enjoy our gardens. So that is it. Be balanced. Be balanced. Alrighty, friends. I will come back in a video to pot up the rooted roses. I will also have other things I still keep going. Keep going and going. My elephant ears are safe in by my wood stove. I took a picture of that, where they're just sitting. I had to tell my husband, these are not going to move here. So be moved from here, so don't chuck them out. They're not pretty there, but it is what it is. All right, friends, I will continue on. The snow is melting fast. We still got a foot out there, so that's why we're not out there. But pretty soon I'll be able to get out in the garden and start some stuff out there. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.